Hello, brothers and sisters. I hope everybody's doing well. I actually, a couple of weeks ago, went to a documentary. And I don't know if you've been paying attention or following along, but I have been. And the documentary was about the Emergency Act that was pulled on the truckers. Now, you can be on whatever side you need to be on, but when it comes down to doing things that are right and doing things that are wrong, what our PM did was pretty much wrong. And there's evidence to support that. And because these people were not terrorists. But anyway, that's what these people were called. So I'm going to show you some footages of the documentary that Rebel News did. And I've been to all of their documentaries, actually, because I'm very interested in what's going on in the country, more than I ever was. Most of my life I never paid attention to this stuff, but because now it's in my face, and now that I'm being called names and they want to take my freedom, then I'm right involved, because I don't want my children or my grandchildren to have to deal with being in a 15-minute city, or being tracked and traced where to go, having digital ID, and the banks shutting off your accounts just because. You know what I mean? So, I'm considered one of those fringe minorities. However, we are a majority, just to put it out there. I've been traveling across Canada for the last 3 years, and I met so many people. And if you know me, I actually do meet a lot of different people because I'm very sociable. I'm very lovable and very sociable. Some people may not think so, but that's on them. That has nothing to do with me. I know who I am, and I know I'm a wonderful and good person. So anyway, I wanted to show you what I've documented in this video. So when we were there to see the movie was about the Emergency Act. There was the lawyers that were actually dealing with this were there as well. So that was very nice to see. And we did have someone from Germany show up and have a surprise visit, which is Christine Anderson, and she's the MP over there in Germany. However, the politicians did not welcome her very well here, and because she's on the side of freedom. Anyway, it was so nice to meet her, so nice to get a picture taken with her, so nice to hear from her. And the evidence is right in the movie, the documentations, you know what I mean? They do their research, and this is what they come up with. So I hope you enjoy this, and may freedom reign. Love you.
How Canada has become really interesting. It became interesting in January and February of this year. Why? Because you had protesters in Ottawa. Really interesting. When people come out in large numbers, you know what the job of reporters is? The job of reporters is to go out and say, why are you on the streets? What brought you here? Why are you here with your kids? Why have you got a bouncy castle in the middle of Ottawa? That's a bit strange. Ask them questions. Just find out the story. But you know what? The government didn't want that in Canada. Your Prime Minister decided in advance that these people were, what did he do? All the modern excommunications. They were Nazis, they were white supremacists, they were anti-Semites, they were probably homophobes, they were misogynists, they were probably transphobes, etc., etc., etc. He did all the things you do in the modern political age if you want to just defenestrate somebody who's awkward to you. And then he brings in the Emergency Powers Act. Now, at such a time, what would the mainstream media do? It would question it. It would question it. The Canadian mainstream media did not. The Canadian mainstream media acted as an amen chorus of the Canadian government. I will give you a couple of examples, but ladies and gentlemen, I could go on for hours with examples of this. You had a CBC host describing the Freedom Convoy as a, quote, feral mob. You had a Toronto Star columnist saying, quote, sorry for the language, it's a homegrown hate farm that was then jet-fueled by an American right-funded rat-fucking operation. Jesus, they can't even write at these papers anymore. CBC said that 2 Indigenous women who were so scared to go outside in Ottawa because of racist violence didn't bother to mention that Indigenous drummers had led the truckers in an O Canada rendition. The National Observer said that the many black and Indigenous Freedom Convoy supporters were in fact duped by the truckers. The Globe and Mail reporter said, "My 13-year-old son told me to tell protesters I'm not a Jew out of fear of anti-Semitic violence, without mentioning that one of the leaders of the convoy was himself Jewish." Now, why is this so rancid? Utterly rancid and corrupt. Because in this country, your media, your mainstream media, is funded by the government. A totally corrupted system. In 2018, election year, coincidence, the Canadian media is given $595 million over 5 years. The Toronto Star estimated it was going to be getting $3 million from the government in the first half of the year. It went on and on. So you see, the mainstream, the government in Canada can tell people they can tell the banks to shut down people's bank accounts. Oh yeah, your government can do that, and if you're happy with that, just think about what would happen if the shoe was on the other foot. The government can do that, but in Canada, they can also tell the media what to do. And the media does the bidding of the Canadian government. That isn't a free society.
Because what you have pulled off here in Canada, and as I said before, these trucks were not only rolling in Canada. No, symbolically, they traveled all over the world. Right. And they gave so much hope to all the people in virtually every single Western democracy, because we have seen in all of these Western democracies infringements on fundamental rights, trampling on people because they would criticize their government, and you guys had your share with your Prime Minister Trudeau, which I heard he ran away.
Yes, he did.
Maybe he did so because he knew I was coming, I don't know. Anyway, he probably figured the last time that he had to face me, that didn't go down too well for him. So maybe that's why he took off. Well, maybe he should just stay wherever the heck he ran. But no, I'm really honored to be here, and it's my first time in Canada, and I've always wanted to visit your beautiful country. I was supposed to come last year, by the way, for on July 1st it was, on your national holiday, but I wasn't allowed to enter the country because I am mRNA free. And I will remain just that. They can stick their stupid vaccine wherever the sun doesn't shine, but it's not going into my body because it is my body, my choice. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you so much. There's stairs here. You don't have to. You know, you look pretty spry though. For a politician.
Yeah, about that politician. Yeah, well, I got into politics, and I always call it was a pure act of self-defense. Because I was so sick and tired, I was so fed up with the former conservative party in Germany and the former liberal party in Germany, which I always voted for. No, they didn't get it right. They went all off the rails with their whatever, transgender, you name it. So yeah, I got into politics because they are not doing their jobs, and that's just a fact. And people really look at your elected representatives. Do not vote for anyone ever again who will sell you down the river. And I can tell you, about 80% of all elected representatives all over the world, especially in the Western democracies, will sell you down the river. Don't let them do this to you. Thank you.
What a pleasant surprise it is that Christine Anderson's here tonight.
Everything on the line.
The small fringe minority who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views.
I've also received reports in the last hour of people allied with the protesters assaulting RCMP officers.
Liars.
So Jason Kenney's statement was not true at the press release.
I can tell you what I just told you, sir.
They had just blocked the border here in Coutts, Alberta to Sweetgrass, Montana.
On August 22nd, 1914, Canadian Parliament passed a bill to bring the War Measures Act into law. This was done to provide the federal government extraordinary powers to bypass other already existing laws in light of the First World War. It also allowed the government to bypass existing protections afforded to Canadians against their own government's overreach. The act allowed the government to legally censor information, arrest or deport Germans and Ukrainians from Canada, and to forcibly dispose of property, all to regain control of transportation, trade, and order. The act was invoked 2 more times throughout Canadian history, next during World War II, and then most famously during the FLQ crisis in the 1970s. Pierre Trudeau Sr., the Prime Minister at the time, invoked the act which allowed Canadian authorities to arrest 450 people who allegedly assisted, conspired, or were a part of the Quebec-based domestic terror group. FLQ cells did commit kidnappings and murders isolated to Quebec. And the invocation of then the War Measures Act was still heavily contested and criticized as the law technically applied to every Canadian. To deal with the crisis in Quebec, the civil liberties of every Canadian were suspended.
How far would you go with that? How far would you extend that? Just watch me. At reducing civil liberties?
Eva Tippik and I were the key counsel on the ground lawyers. And then Tamara was, the figurehead of the whole thing. Chris Barber as well. Chris being a trucker with Big Red, his symbolic truck.
She hasn't been able to publicly talk because of the insane bail conditions that have been imposed on her for her alleged, what is it even called? Mischief. It's so hard to even think of the name because what did she do? Really, I still have a hard time understanding what the charges are about.
It's really obvious that it became clear to everybody on the ground in Ottawa during the protests that the smartest thing they could do was stay calm, stay peaceful, stay focused on the themes of peace, love, and unity, of this unprecedented, arbitrary government public health policy of restricting 6 million Canadians from traveling, of forcing people out of their jobs because they were concerned about the effects of taking an experimental treatment.
Mandates wouldn't allow their kids to be with their adults when they took their last breath. You've seen the mental health issues in this country just plummet.
I actually apologized to them at the end of the hearing. I didn't tell them at the beginning of the hearing that I actually believed this stuff I read in the news, but I said, listen, I owe you guys an apology. I did believe this stuff. I thought I was just doing my regular job where I'm representing somebody and trying to make a bad situation better. But it turned out it was all just a bunch of bullshit, to be quite frank, and
At this time, to seize or, I think even if I would suggest even to freeze assets, the RCMP or the bank would need a court order to do that.
To freeze And shortly after the freezes, I had leaked to me from a place, I don't even know how I got it anymore, but it was the official RCMP list. And on the first number of pages, it has most of my clients listed. And there's others as well that aren't my clients and never were, and I don't even know who they are. And which illustrates something, that's how wrong they got it. They froze people's bank accounts that had nothing to do with the convoy, or no real involvement in it. The police officer who prepared this document put his source, his evidentiary source, and it said, it had a hyperlink in blue to CTV News, who's who in the Freedom Convoy. So that was the investigation.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate. You're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate.
It also included insurance that's provided by insurance companies. So vehicle insurance, house insurance, commercial liability insurance, life insurance.
The media never left that media room. They never left it once. I think it was because to leave it would humanize the people that were speaking. They couldn't be in the same room with Tamara Leach and not experience her anguish. They couldn't be in that committee room where we were, sitting right behind you guys, as you guys got those dumps of documents, all redacted while the witness is testifying. And I could see your frustration, and you guys would all the lawyers would get the document dumped at the same time and open up their laptop and just, it was like an audible groan. The media sitting with each other, talking with each other about how bad everybody was. They missed what was really important, and what was really important was happening in that commission room. And if they went literally across the hall, 5 feet across the hall, it would have been a completely different story. And they knew it was a different story, but they couldn't be in there because then they'd have to tell it. Now I want to ask you, Eva, one thing that we did, that I saw, that we didn't really report on, was the behavior of some of the junior bureaucrats that were in the commission room. Just talk a little bit about what that was like, because they were so obnoxious, these little government bureaucrats. It was just a big joke to them, wasn't it?
Yeah, and to kind of just give more context to it, those were Minister Mendicino's like communications people. So this is the Minister of Public Safety, not something to take lightly when we're at an inquiry for a national security threat. And they were sitting there, 3 of them in a row, texting and laughing. Wow. While Minister Mendicino is up there, and it was just embarrassing as a Canadian to see that. And that takes me to the point, and I think I did say it, watching what transpired in Ottawa, and this is again why I always encouraged everybody to watch on their own, is unfortunately you really saw what government is like. You really saw, and I use the word often, and I don't say it with pride, incompetence. Yeah. And when you see children that are like the right hand of Minister Mendicino laughing like that at the public inquiry, that was an example of what we saw throughout the 6 weeks. So it was heartbreaking in a way to see that.
Considered putting Tamara up to cross-examine. He would have shit his pants. So, well, we couldn't. There was reasons why, but it was a moment of relief and encouragement for us to sort of fantasize about it for a moment. So we're like, all right, so we got legal check boxes is how we do things as lawyers. We need to get a police official to acknowledge that there wasn't sabotage, there wasn't insurrection, there wasn't that. Okay, we had that check mark. Oh no, actually we had it from every police officer or police official. Okay, so our boxes that we had to get a check mark in, we had so many check marks in them that the boxes were black. So we didn't need the Prime Minister to say anything legal. because we already had all the abundance of evidence from people who are more qualified to answer the legal questions. And we also anticipated, and the grand 10 minutes were allocated. So you can't do the normal stuff on a witness. Like if you want to play silly bugger with me, give me an hour and you're going to regret it, because I'm going to get the truth out of you. But it's going to take me a while, because you're going to go down a rabbit hole and I'm going to follow you down and I'm going to pull you out by your ear, and then you're going to go down another rabbit hole and I'm going to pull you out. You saw Brendan Miller do that masterfully many times. So we're like, okay, we're not going to play that game with this guy, because he's going to squirm out and say something politician-y. So we're like, okay, and this, Tamara really wanted this. She wanted, because they kept blocking us from allowing Canadians to get their voice into the inquiry, we wanted Eva to channel the voice of Canadians, just like she said. The other thing that kind of made us snicker was we knew that they would have been prepping him for like a week for being crossed by Brendan Miller. And all of a sudden, Eva shows up. Hi. And I said to her, I said, Eva, what are you going to wear? She goes, my pink blazer. Because he hates strong women. And I was like, yeah, we're going to mess with this fucker. You know, and there was like, oh, Keith, you should do it. And I'm like, no, I got my place, but this is Eva's moment. And so I was super pleased with how she handled it. And I just thought I'd give you a little color as to what was going on behind the scenes.
I hope you enjoyed that. As you can see, I only got a little bit of what the actual documentary is. It's a very long documentary, and I advise you to go to Rebel News and go to the website and download it and watch it. And you can actually see how the Emergency Act wasn't called for. They had other things. I mean, even the police were talking about that. They had other things that they could have done. However, he just wanted to take a temper tantrum and just, do what he wanted to do. And sometimes I feel we are being run by the mafia, and he thinks he's kingpin, Is there a need for that kind of shit? Excuse my language. Like, really? I'm appalled on how this country is being run. But however, I do still love my country, but it's not the same as how I grew up and what I've known. But you do have to know this has been going a long time. It just hasn't been in plain sight like it is now. And if you do take a look, you will see. You won't get it on the mainstream media. You won't get it on your television. Your program box is there because it's a program box. And we're all programmed very differently. However, I hope you enjoyed the movie. Please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure that you just share this out. Show people. Everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to be on the same page. We need to give this love and light going. Enough with the hatred. Enough with the division. Just enough already. You know what I mean? Haven't you had enough? I know I have had enough. For people not talking to each other, people calling each other down, people judging each other. Like, enough. Let's live in the good way. Thank you so much. Sending love and light. Like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to comment.